Hi, welcome to another episode of the Nursing Dose with Farah with your host, Nurse Farah, Dr. Laurent, aka the Nurse Career Coach. And today we have a special guest. We have Amy McCarthy, who's going to talk about all things AI and how we could use AI and advocate in the healthcare space. And I just got out of the shower with my new look here. So,
Beautiful.
so happy to have you on. If you want to say hello to everyone and introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yes. Hey, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Farah, for inviting me. I'm Amy McCarthy. I am the Chief Nursing Officer of a company called Hippocratic AI. We're in the healthcare tech space using generative AI to co-design with nurses and really influence and reshape how how our workflows work today, which has been really fun. And then I also have the honor and privilege of serving as the president of the Texas Nurses Association, where I get to work with nurses across the state, and that's super fun. I enjoy both roles. I'm super lucky.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you. I know we had some, early conversations on about really, advocacy in healthcare and how, how healthcare is changing and sometimes how, it does not change as fast as we probably want it to change.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and particularly even nursing. So if you want to kind of talk about your journey to getting to where you are now with
Yeah.
doing this AI work, if you wanted to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've always been interested in innovation and how we recreate our spaces. It always drove me crazy, um, knowing that there's technology out there, but
Yeah.
yet we're not using it to the full ability that we could be in the healthcare space. And then you look at what's happening with nurses today and how much we're having to do, how many tasks keep getting put on nurses. And so I've always tried to uh, look and see how we use innovation and technology to really make the workplace a better environment for nurses, and inevitably that's going to create a better environment for patients, right? And
Yeah.
so I got involved in committees throughout my career. I was a women's and infants nurse, mother baby. My last role in the inpatient sector was director of nursing over women's and infants, but I got asked by a colleague of mine to join the Nurse Advisory Council for Hippocratic AI. And I thought it was really interesting that they were bringing a group of nurses together to help influence and kind of have a conversation around technology could look like. And a couple months later, they ended up posting their CNO role. And I said, why not? Why not apply?
Yeah.
What's there to lose in that? And I'm lucky enough to be in the role today. And so, my favorite part of this role is really getting to meet with nurses and clinicians across the country and kind of talk about what their pain points are, and talk and think about how we can use AI to reconstruct all of that, but also advocating for nursing in the tech space where there's not a lot of nurses, right? I'm constantly thinking about how do we bring nursing along on this journey.
Yeah.
So I'm currently working on creating education that nurses can take, microeducation courses for nurses to learn more about AI. And then we recently had a partnership with the Nurses on Boards Coalition. And I know I saw you interviewing one of their board members earlier. And so really excited to try and bring the synergy together and see how we can meld nursing and tech more, because nurses need to be in that space, right? We need to be really influencing how this is working and how it's being implemented in our care spaces, because if we can do that successfully, then we're gonna be able to have products that nurses actually want to use that makes sense in what they're doing. And ultimately, my hope is that we're gonna keep nurses at the bedside, we're gonna keep nurses engaged, and that hopefully end up in a better environment. That's the goal.
That is awesome. I mean, you mentioned so many great things, and shout out to Dr. Kimberly Madison. She's showing up.
Yes.
She's always supporting, so shout out to her. Yeah, I wanted to just bring up, the fact that you're saying, nurses need to be more in tech. I feel like as healthcare has evolved, a lot of nurses look at tech like maybe like, oh, I want to be an informatics nurse or something like
Yeah.
that, right? It's very like, kind of that space. but there's so much more, right, that we can do. And then when you talked about tech, it just like automatically made me think of Afro Tech. I don't know if you know Morgan Devon, but she has that whole Afro Tech platform. There's like all these different industries, and I'm like, nursing needs to learn from other industries,
Yeah.
right? So this is, and then shameless plug. This is, I'm having my conference in March, and part of my vision for that is, traditionally, I think most nursing conferences are like either nurse leaders all together, or nursing students all together, or nurse practitioners all together. So, and I know there's a few like DMPs of color, is like very progressive, has pretty much everybody mixed in. So I kind of want to do that style as well, where I have nursing students, leaders, executives, and non-nurses
Yes.
participate who are female leaders and experts in their industry, like whether they're in tech or they're stylists, or we're really going to talk heavy about like personal branding and things like that. But I mean, I think we just need to learn from other industries, and I think nursing hasn't done that very well in the last I guess decades, right? So I
Yeah.
think this is great that you're talking about this, and I think more nurses should get involved, and even like with the nurses on boards, right?
Right.
We don't necessarily have to be in this space where it's just healthcare related or just nursing, because nursing, really, when we look at nursing holistically, right, like how it impacts health, right, we like determinants of health, like we should be everywhere,
We
right?
should. We should. Well, I'll tell you, being in industry now, you realize I couldn't agree more when you talk about how nurses need to have conversations with people who aren't nurses, because
Mhm.
that's where I mean, it can be an uncomfortable place to be, right? As you start to find your footing in that world, and I've certainly had to learn a lot in the last couple of months. I would say I've learned so much, but I think sometimes we get into this tendency of talking to each other and we end up creating this bubble, right?
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. I think that there should be dialogue and conversation and we should learn from each other as nurses. But I think it's equally, if not more important, especially today, when you think about nurses and what they can contribute to conversations in various industries, we've got to take that step to walk outside of this bubble. And again, it can be uncomfortable, but get lean into that space and
Mhm.
share the knowledge and the expertise that we have, because I think that we as nurses have a branding problem, right? We
Yeah.
need to rebrand our profession, a
Mhm.
profession that knows what is going on in clinical care. We are a part of every workflow. And the more and more I talk with engineers and people in the tech, the more I try to share that story, to say, listen, nurses are way more than people in scrubs, right? That's a
Yep.
portion of who we are, but
Yep.
we are leaders, we are innovators, we're creative, we understand how hospitals function. We are the largest workforce in the hospital space. And so exactly, right? So we need to be confident
Yes.
when we step in and say, listen, I understand this space. You need to use me and my voice, and let's work together. I think if nurses can do more of that, I think our physician colleagues do a fantastic job of
Yeah.
being a part of all those spaces. But they have that confidence, that energy to walk in, right? We need to do more of that and really advocate for ourselves. And I think some of that is a branding, thing that we need to focus on, but also just believing that we are the experts and we need to share that.
Yeah, so there's so many things here that you mentioned. I mean, I think let alone like me being a nurse career coach and helping new nurses, I think one big thing is like they struggle with confidence, obviously coming out of nursing school and transitioning to practice. And then also mindset, like they're like, oh, because nursing school conditions you to think kind of you have to start in the hospital or you have to start in med surge. So
Right.
I kind of help them branch out and do different things, but you don't even have to start there. So
Right.
the fact that you mentioned that you just applied for the CNO position at this, AI company, more nurses need to think like that. I think somebody recently, I think it was Sarah Fung, another nurse career coach that I collaborate with sometimes, and she's a creator, and she was saying, you can apply for roles that don't have the word nursing in it, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's true because you don't, like, a lot of nurses sometimes limit themselves.
Correct.
Um,
Agreed.
but my other question to you, just to kind of get real a little bit,
Yeah.
I've spent some time in the C-suite, and I can kind of see in certain spaces where, um, sometimes they don't want to listen to the
Yeah.
nurses, right? Or they're you bring up some ideas and they kind of cut you off or whatever. I've learned a way to kind of navigate and see how I can make an impact a different way. But what is your advice to those nurses that are trying
Yeah.
in the spaces they're in now to advocate, but it's not working? What are next steps for them?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've certainly been in that space. And every, from starting as a nurse, in a mother baby unit, I went a non-traditional route. I didn't go med surge. And then as I rose up in leadership, especially as a young nurse, I was constantly told no. I was
Yeah.
told it's not my time. And that's frustrating, right? And, I have learned to, one, be persistent. And that's my advice to nurses, regardless of where you are in your journey. Even though you're told no right now, it doesn't mean that you'll be told no in a couple of months, right? Maybe some of it is just timing,
Mhm.
but where I really push nurses is that just because you get told no doesn't mean that your journey ends there. Doesn't mean that you should stop. I do believe that you can find people who listen, and so when you look at the C-suite, if you're not getting that response that you want, start asking some questions. Tell me a little bit more, and I really emphasize having this attitude of curiosity,
Yes.
you know and asking, tell me a little bit more about why we can't do this, and being more collaborative, because I will say that sometimes where I feel like nurses find themselves is in this reactive mode, and I completely understand it.
Yeah.
But think about being on the other end of that. Sometimes that shuts down a conversation and a relationship. And so I really try to emphasize in my own leadership, and even to nurses that I'm mentoring, maintaining that attitude of curiosity and trying to figure out why, and
Mhm.
figure out, okay, so maybe the idea that I brought to the table, maybe that's not the idea that's going to work, but maybe there's a portion of it that might work.
Yeah.
Um, we live in a culture of instant gratification, and I get it. I get that people want what they want right now. But in my work in policy, through TNA, and even in trying to change culture, uh,
Yes.
it takes time and it
Mhm.
takes persistence. And yes, that can be tiring at times, but it's worth it. For me, I want to change the profession of nursing for the better. That is what keeps me grounded every day. I think about the nurses that I've led. I think about the nurses who I've worked alongside with, and I am constantly trying to make things better for them. And that's going to take years to do. But if I can do a little bit every day, then those little pieces are going to add up in the long run. And so that's what I tell nurses all the time is don't give up on that. I know it's super frustrating to be told no, but if I could show you a CV of my accomplishments versus a CV of all the times that I was told no, or you're not ready yet, or this isn't the position for you, that CV would be pages upon pages longer than the resume of accomplishments. And I've just had to have the mentality of being persistent and realizing, what I'm working towards, and what is the end goal for me.
Yeah, and I think those are some great points because I think sometimes, there's a lot of quotes about like, rejection is like
Yeah,
redirection or whatever.
yeah,
There's another one that I heard that it's actually like protection, right? So maybe you're not meant to be there, right? Just like the whole thing. And there's another way to make a bigger impact if you can't do it where you're currently at, but it doesn't mean that what you've learned, right? Like you're gonna take everything that you've learned, and
like,
then it's all about, like you said, like relationship building, communication skills, like emotional intelligence, and then like bringing it from their perspective.
yeah,
That's kind of what I've learned too, and like a little bit in business and marketing. Um, because when you present an idea, you present something, you have to kind of like present it in a way that is going to be beneficial to the other person so they can kind of understand it. So I think you're right. I think nurses need to kind of be creative in the way they present their ideas,
yeah,
and yeah, and be more collaborative.
yeah.
Let me see what she says here. Um, so she says, Amy mentioned branding. Farrah will be talking about branding at the Making Money Moves conference. You don't have to miss it. You don't want to miss it, right? So yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so branding, I think, I know it's kind of off topic of AI, but it can kind of be tweaked into it because really, I think I feel like when AI kind of came out, there was a well, it's been around for a while, but
Yeah.
like the actual like real talk of it, and like
Yeah.
in academia, they're like, but students are gonna cheat and write papers and whatever, and I'm like, it's there, it's not going away. So
Right.
there's like half of the people that kind of embraced it, and then half that are still kind of slow adopters. But um, for branding, I don't think some nurses understand the power of branding. So whether it's like influence and leadership,
Yep.
so if can you maybe explain what for you, obviously being such a public figure and visible, being the president of the Texas Nursing Association, how has branding kind of helped you in your career,
Yeah.
helped you grow?
Yeah. So, I'll admit, so before I became a nurse, I worked in communications and marketing for a little bit. So,
Perfect.
it's funny how often my friends, when I transitioned to nursing, a lot of them said, "Well, how are you going to use communications and marketing?" And I will tell you, I use it every single day, in how I communicate with different audiences,
Mhm,
just how I present myself. And I mean, branding is a very powerful thing. And when I think of myself and how I
mhm,
brand myself, I want to be seen, as a leader. I want to be seen, as an expert in my craft, and I want to be approachable too, right? Um,
mhm,
that's been very important to me. There's so many conversations right now about like millennial versus baby boomer versus all these generations, and we're more powerful together, right? As a group. I mean, yes, every generation has their quirks, has a different way of working in spaces, but I never want to be seen as, yes, I do represent a younger voice, but I also focus very much on what I'm putting out there, on social media. Even on my personal channels, I want to be
yeah.
positive. And I'll be the first to say, not every day is positive for me. There's certainly, as a leader, I know, it's shocking, right? People will say, "Oh, you're always like so happy," and I'm like, "Listen, y'all, like sometimes Amy is not happy." but I do. I try to take
Yeah.
on a message of not just being positive, but being real, because I think that people appreciate that mix, right? And
Mhm.
life is so hard right now. There's so much going on in society, and it's easy to get bogged down. And I see nurses get bogged down so easily, and really expressing that burnout, in ways. And I always think about that. When I see nurses posting and I see some of the content, I'm like, man, I know that people are so tired, and I try to keep that in mind. But when you look at the public, we're considered the nation's most trusted profession, and that's something we
Mhm.
don't want to lose. And I think that we need to use that to our advantage to really tell our story, and to showcase to people, look at what we do. This is what we do, right? Like, we control. I gave a talk this morning to a group of nursing students, and I said, we control our image. We
Yeah.
control our brand.
Yeah.
And we have to think about how we want people to see us. Do we want people to see us as just, I mean, we
Complainers or
right, right, that's why I'm very intentional about, like, these are all the different things that nurses can do. Nurses can play a part in AI. Nurses can play a part in policy. I talk about all of those things on my LinkedIn and my social media, because I want nurses, and I'll have people, sometimes hate on me and say, "You're always posting all of your stuff on LinkedIn." Well, that's because I know it's powerful for people to see
so
what
what?
you can do. That's also a piece of this, is I want people to know, I want nurses to know, you you can do all of these things. You
Yeah,
can't.
I mean, don't listen to those. I mean, seriously. Yeah, the thing is, you're right. Like, and this is part of my platform too, and what I choose to do. Yeah, I talk about the real things in nursing sometimes too, because it's there, and it's there in every industry.
It is.
However, I always say that I truly believe nursing is the best profession in the world, and I truly believe that. And if you don't like something, just change it to like you could go on a cruise ship and be a nurse on a cruise ship.
You
Like
could.
you could work in a zoo. Like I used to work with a nurse that worked at the Bronx Zoo in New York, but like literally there's something for everyone. And if you get bored or you don't like something, then you can change it. Or like you said, be a part of the change with like being involved.
Yeah.
And to me, why that's most important, like you said, is to educate the public And not even just the public, educate the next generation of nurses and current nurses to know their opportunities, like you said, because there's so much to do,
Right.
and really how to get there. And then we want more nurses to come into the profession, right?
Yeah.
We want to recruit more and then have this positive image of nursing so that they don't think it's just so, oh, a nurse just works in a hospital like that,
Right.
that old school kind of
Right.
thinking.
There's so many old school
Yeah.
traditions that we have held on to. I mean, you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
we get told that we have to go to hospital, we have to go to med surg. Part of what I talk about in a lot of my talks with nursing students is there's a limitless opportunity
Yeah.
to do all sorts of things now. You don't just have to. It always annoyed me when people, told me you have to go straight into med surg. I get why they're saying that, but why is if my love is mother baby, I will always remember the moment I stepped on a mother baby unit as a nursing student and the immediate connection I felt in that unit. And I knew that that's where I wanted to be. And I had people tell me throughout my career, well, because you're a mother baby nurse, you may have limited opportunities in leadership, or you may have limited opportunities to grow. In fact, I got that question this morning from a nursing student. She's a PCT on a mother baby unit. And she said, am I killing my career if I become a mother baby nurse? And I was like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because here's what I say: nursing is hard. Nursing is hard at the bedside, regardless of what specialty you choose. So why go in just to have a check mark of 2 years? Why go in and be miserable? I want every nurse that starts their career, I want them to find what they love. And your career is limitless, right? I mean, and I try to use my career journey as an example. I'm a proud mother baby nurse. I'm a proud women's and infants nurse. And
Yep.
now I'm a CNO of a healthcare tech company. And it's not always the most traditional route, but I think more and more what you're seeing today is nurses are starting to let go of that traditional route, and figure out what brings them joy. And that makes me so happy, right? At the end of the day, when I looked at positions, I wanted something that brought me joy. And being in women's and infants, there was not one moment that I regretted. It brought me such joy, and I don't regret that decision at all.
Okay. Amy, this is what I preach every day, all day. Like this is why I became that nurse career coach, because same thing. They told me I couldn't be an ER nurse. I was like, that was the best decision I did, was to be an ER nurse. And now I'm helping these other nurses do whatever it is they want, because they get so excited, and we don't want to diminish that, that flame they have to like do what it is that they want, right? And then like, who cares? And then for all the nurses out there, if you're in a particular position and let's say you're there 6 months and you thought you would have liked it, but you hate it, you don't have to stay there a year. Like there's
Yeah.
no rule that says that. So don't listen to people. That's what I always say. I mean, listen to people that you maybe aspire to be like, but even then, try it out yourself,
Mhm.
because you never know until you actually do it.
Right.
So in terms of AI, like if a nurse is watching and is interested in getting more involved in AI, what would you recommend that they do?
Yeah. So, that's a great question. And I'm trying to create those opportunities just in my own role. But I would say, seek out and see what's happening in the technology sector. I mean, that's how I got involved, right? I mean, if you had told me a year ago that I was going to be the CNO of a generative AI healthcare tech company, I would have looked at you like I was crazy. Like what? But I had a colleague of mine who reached out and said, "Would you like to be a part of this opportunity on this advisory council?" And I said, "Absolutely." At most,
Mhm.
it's a learning opportunity. You never know, and that's really how I've run my career. Is I've spent a lot of time reaching out to people whose careers I really admire, and asking them questions. Even if it's just like a one Zoom call.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a relationship that you're building. And so I've spent so much of my career trying to build those connections. And I recommend that to all nurses. If you have someone that you're following or admire in the tech space or in the AI space, reach out to them. So I have nurses who reach out to me all the time. And I, at least try to have a conversation and talk about, hey, here are the options. And
Mhm.
my hope is to just, in my own role, to create more opportunities for nurses to be a part of that conversation. Because I feel that that's part of my responsibility in this role, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that I take for granted. However, I can engage nurses and bring them into this realm is going to be, and it's why I preach all the time. We need to co-design tech with nurses. And it's a lot of what I do on a day-to-day basis. I always ask for nurses to be present at the table because you're going to build a better product at the end of the day. So I
Yeah.
guess to summarize, my advice is, look at people on LinkedIn who are part of companies you admire. Reach out to them. Send them a message. See what advisory councils are out there, or what opportunities on education, fellowships, those types of things. And it may not immediately lead to what you want, but it's a
Mhm.
building process, right? Eventually, those
Yes.
relationships all coincide, and I mean, it ends up working out.
I mean, look at how we met. I literally just reached out to you on LinkedIn. I said, "Hey,
Yeah,
let's get on a Zoom and
yeah,
meet." And then, we're just like, we both like to talk and advocate. We're like, yeah, yeah. I'm like, you should come on my podcast. She's like, yeah, okay, let's do
yeah.
it.
Let's do
Yeah.
it.
So it's literally just having conversations and networking. And, you know, this is why this conference that I'm going to be having is so important. Like you talked about, just reaching out, like literally one connection, you never know where it can lead. And sometimes you might think like, oh, I'm volunteering or whatever, but you're learning skills, like you said, as you're going. And sometimes you might want to take a role, but you want to be strategic in your role selection.
Yeah,
Maybe you're not moving up, but maybe that role is going to be the stepping stone to another bigger role. And gather the skills that you need to get you to where you want to be. So sometimes it's not just about those titles and the money or whatever. It's like really being strategic into where you want to be.
right.
Um,
Exactly.
oh my God. Okay, so they're loving the conversation right now. We got Jacob and
I love this.
yes. So they're saying there's tremendous opportunity. I don't know who the LinkedIn user is, but you could say hello.
Yeah,
Excited to participate in our organizational pilot for Microsoft Copilot for efficiencies and day-to-day admin tasks to care management program
I
support.
love
Yeah, I mean, seriously, like AI is going to make things so much more efficient for the healthcare in the healthcare space, but we just need to be, like you said, be involved. Great advice. I'd love to meet you at the conference if you plan to attend.
it. Try
Yeah,
and make it work, y'all.
she already got her tickets. Okay, she's one of the first ones. I mean, got her flight and everything. So yes, come to the Nurses Making Money Moves conference.
Yes.
And she says, "Thank you so much for your insight." Um, yeah. So what are you? I would say my last kind of main question would be, what are you most excited about in AI right now?
Yeah. Having spent my career in the inpatient hospital space, I think about just the inefficiencies that exist and the amount of administrative burden that has been placed on nurses.
Mhm,
Every day there's task after task after task, and that is a large part of what's sucking a lot of that joy out of nurses today, right?
mhm,
And so when I look at AI and the capabilities of what this technology can do,
mhm,
what I'm most excited about is being able to enter into this space. And it's not just my company, it's others. And really, instead of putting band-aids on things, actually creating solutions and actually redesigning the workflow, redesigning what team nursing looks like, right? I always talk about, how do we bring technology as a part of that team, right? How do we augment what a nurse can do today?
mhm, mhm,
Because the fact is that patients are coming in, they're sicker. We need more resources. There's a shortage of nurses out there, and so we need to find solutions. Otherwise, you're going to continue to see this hemorrhaging of our workforce, and rightfully so, because the workplace is hard. It's mentally taxing. There's just a lot that's affecting nurses today, and I do believe very strongly that this technology, whether it's AI, through the form of ambient listening, through AI agents, which is what I work on, all of these things can really start to make a dent if done
mhm.
intentionally, and really kind of reanalyzing and sitting down with nurses and saying, okay, let's look at your workflow, let's look at your pain points, and let's think about all the technology that's out there, and then let's start to redesign. Right? If nurses are a part of that conversation and redesigning with us, then I have no doubt that we're gonna create a better healthcare space, and that's not only going to be better for the nursing profession, that's going to be better for our patients in the long run, because I think there's a lot of work to do in that realm too, and nurses so badly want to help our patients. I just think we need to help them. We need to help them out, and that's a lot of what I left the inpatient space and joined industry to do just that. I wanted to take my nursing knowledge and be able to bring that and connect our tech space with what nursing and healthcare is doing today, and hopefully we'll make a dent.
That is awesome. You're doing amazing things. And honestly, I think one of the biggest things will just be, like you said, efficiencies, but really saving
Yeah.
healthcare team members time
Yes.
to do more things, because we know access to care and all these things, documentation can suck up so much time. So, thank you again. Such a great conversation. Two quick questions. I
Yeah.
always like fun questions. Let's say, what are you currently listening to? Like, what's on your playlist? What's the top stuff?
Oh, well, so Spotify top, my 2024 playlist. That's always fun. There's a lot of Taylor Swift on that, but I'm also a
Yeah.
90s country fan. And so George Strait
Okay.
is a big one as well. So, being from Texas, I gotta claim those country roots. So I'd say those top two right now.
Okay. Awesome. And then, what would you say is like your top, let's say, two bucket list items?
Oh, I want to travel internationally.
Yeah.
I have not been able to do that in a really long time, and so I have an 8-year-old son. I love being a mom. I want to be able to take him. He wants to go to Australia, so that's on the bucket list for us. And then, just trying to do more in changing in changing our profession and healthcare too. I mean, that's always a bucket list for me.
Okay. And then, you know what? She's probably going to remind me. I knew she was. I forget to do this sometimes. I was on podcast one day, and it was, her name is Fallon, and she does a reverse question,
Oh
and
yeah.
I ask sometimes. So, what would you, if you want to flip the interview, and like, what would you ask me or the audience? Like one question you would like to ask.
I guess what I would love to ask you, Farah, is, what would be the one thing you'd want to see AI do in the nursing profession?
um,
If you could pick one thing based on your experiences.
Honestly, so okay, there's a lot. But I think from working as a leader and also like waiting around for things, HR has a lot of inefficiencies,
Yeah.
and I know AI is doing a lot of work with like workforce and like getting them in quickly, and obviously we have a huge staffing issue. So I would say using AI to hire nurses a lot more quickly, because how many times do nurses apply and then they're waiting 2, 3, 4 weeks or sometimes months before they hear back from the organization, and it's really not efficient when they're ready to go and ready to start. So I would say that's probably what I would say
Okay. I
would be
like
the
that.
first thing. Yeah.
I like that. That's
All
great.
right. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for joining the conversation. And if you haven't subscribed to the Nursing Dose with Farah, you could subscribe on YouTube or subscribe on Spotify, and then let them know where they can find you. And definitely connect with Amy on LinkedIn. We're
Yes, I
all
was going to say, follow me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. I'm also on Instagram as A McCarthy RN. So follow me there for both, all my nursing stuff, but also just, family time and a lot of pictures of my son. We're obsessed with Christmas. It's my favorite holiday. So I'm a Christmas baby. We're close to Christmas. Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So lots of pictures of just life and, real life. So definitely connect with me. I'm always happy to have a conversation with nurses. That's one of my favorite things to do. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Happy holidays,
Yeah.
everybody. And I'll talk to you soon. And just stay on for 1 minute.